Since the beginning of time, man has looked for meaning and tried to find meaning in his life and in his work. And so the question that we are going to discuss today is, why do people want meaningful work? And why is that important? And I think the concept of meaningful work, or like having the right to do meaningful work, let's say, is a relatively new concept that like our generation is pursuing, but I don't think that was available to people not too long ago, right? Like, think of your parents and your grandparents' generations, and even further back, like definitely not. Like, meaningful work wasn't a part of like, if you were lucky enough to like the work that you were assigned, like 100 years ago, that's great. But like, if you said that you're pursuing meaningful work, they probably would have laughed in your face. I remember I asked my grandparents, who grew up in communist Romania, if they liked their jobs. And they both looked at me like I had three heads. Like, they both looked at me like I asked the craziest question in the world. Like, what do you mean, like my job? You know what I mean? Like, and it made me realize that this pursuit of meaningful work is a privilege that we get to have, and that our ancestors didn't really have. Like, it wasn't really an option for a lot of our ancestors, if not all of them. And so on one hand, that's a blessing, because we have the chance now to pursue stuff, or to pursue work that we actually care about, on one hand. On the other hand, that's a lot of pressure, because like now we actually have to figure out what that is. And our ancestors didn't have to burden themselves with this kind of questions, because it didn't matter. Like, they would just do the work that it was assigned to them, and they really didn't have like ways to get out of it. And so, like, whatever work you were given, like whatever job you had the privilege of getting, that was the job that you did, and nobody cared if it was meaningful to you or not. And so now we live in different times, and we actually can create meaningful work for ourselves, but that also like comes with the question of how do we define meaningful work. And I think that answer is highly personal. I don't think there is a formula or like a set, equation that you can put into a computer or in ChatGPT that will give you like exactly the job description or the exact like work that you can do, right? Like that you would find meaningful, right? Like, it's a highly personalized question that each of us need to ask ourselves at some point in our lives now. And then we will have to guide our children to be able to do meaningful work, because like for them, I'm guessing that the opportunities are going to be like 10 times more diverse than we have now, and 10 times more options, and 10 times like more ways to make it. And so if we do figure it out, that can impact our lives, and that can impact like future generations, if you're able to figure out what meaningful work is and how to find it for yourself. And so to me, I kind of like stumbled upon this in a surprising way, and I think it kind of shocked me more than it shocked everybody else. And it happened a few years back when I got this idea to write my first book. And I've never written anything before. And I'm not like, I don't have an English major. I'm not trained in writing in any sort of way. I have a bachelor's in biology, and my day job is like in research. And so like this idea, like this desire to write a book came to me, and I actually followed up on that hunch. And by the end of that project, like by the time that I actually finished the first book, I realized that like writing is meaningful work to me. And like I said, I was like more shocked than anybody else to discover this. And then I just kept going. I just kept doing it because, well, actually because I just couldn't, I didn't know how to stop. Like writing feels like a natural extension of my I am now, like a natural extension of my identity. Like I can't imagine my life without writing. And so I stumbled upon it. I stumbled upon my definition of meaningful work because I followed a desire, essentially, and I followed an idea that I had, and I didn't put limitations on myself on what I thought was possible for me, or like I didn't put limitations on myself based on my past, because like I said, I've never like written anything before then. And I think most people would have looked at that and would have said, well, you've never written a book before, you've never written anything before, you don't have a degree in like anything related to writing, you don't have a publishing contract, you don't have an agent, therefore like this desire is impossible. And I think that's the problem. I think that 99% of people would have just stopped there and would have like let the desire go and like decide to not pursue it. But me, with my delusional thought, I looked at those constraints and I said, it doesn't matter. I'm gonna make it anyway. Like I'm gonna make this happen anyway. And I just started working on it because that's just how I think. And I am so glad that I did. I'm so glad that I ignored reality in a sense, and I only saw like the end result. I just saw like me with my book, and I just kept like visualizing that and kept pursuing that until it happened. And so that's how I all this to say that I discovered what meaningful work is to me by following a desire that I had. And I think I made another video about this actually. And I think that our desires are not random. And this is like definitely an example of how this is true. And I said in that video, and I'll say it in this one, that I don't think that God would place random desires in our hearts, and the desires that we do have are signs, are like breadcrumbs from the divine that we should follow. And if you have a strong desire for something, that is 100% a sign that you can have that thing. Otherwise you wouldn't care about it. You would look at it and you would be like, you know what I mean? Like I know many people that the thought of writing a book, like they couldn't care less. But to me, I got that thought, I got that desire, and I was like, oh, brilliant. I love it. Let's go. And I got all excited about it. And by the time I wrote the book, I realized that I can find a lot of meaning through writing and through sharing my work. And so if you do have a strong desire to do something or to pursue something, I think that you should 100% follow that. And if you have the desire, that means that you can achieve that goal and you can have that thing, whatever it is, no matter how impossible it may seem. And I think desires should be pursued to the highest extent possible. I don't think that they're selfish. I don't think that it's silly. I think that it's like necessary. Like, I think it's like it's really good for the person that it's really going to help you become the person that you've always wanted to be. But most of the time that can't happen if you don't follow these nudges and if you don't follow these desires. And I think the desires that we have are like breadcrumbs from the divine that lead us to our future selves, essentially, or maybe even breadcrumbs from our future selves that are pulling us towards like the best version of ourselves. And of course you have the option to not pursue them, but if you do, then you'll never make it, like you'll never reach your potential. And so that will be like an opportunity wasted for sure. And so I think people want meaningful work because work is like 80% of what we do. And so if you don't do meaningful work, then you're not different from a robot or from like this idea that you can just have any kind of humdrum job and get good benefits and get paid like, a decent salary is not going to cut it for most people. Like, that's just not exciting anymore. And so meaningful work is a way for our soul to come online and for us to become closer and closer to our best selves and the people that we can really become. And so if this kind of video and these kinds of questions are interesting to you, then you would definitely love my book that I published recently. It's called Mastering the Middle, and it's now available for purchase on Amazon. In this book, I talk about the middle, which I define as the space between where you are now and where you want to be. The space between the time that you set a goal or the time that you have a desire to the time that you accomplish that desire, and what to do in that gap of time that I call the middle. The middle is not a passive time. It's a very active time where a lot is happening internally. And this book, I think, is a great guide for people that are stuck in the middle and waiting for ideas on how to move forward. I think this book can really help a lot of people. And so if that sounds interesting to you, I will leave the link in the description box below. And thank you so much for watching this video. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.